What a wonderful day we've had, my dear students. Welcome to our English class, where we make language learning fun and easy. I'm your English teacher, Teacher JLo. Before we begin, make sure you have a copy of English 9, Quarter 3, Module 1, Biases and Prejudices. What comes into your mind when you see this logo? Bawal Judgmental is a segment from a famous noontime television show, Eat Bulaga. Was there a time in your life that you consider yourself prejudging others? Do you consider yourself judgmental as well? Then, how will you judge these given dialogues? Do you believe that the statements above show fairness and equality? If your answer is no, then you are good in detecting prejudices. But what made you say that the dialogues show prejudices? Prejudice refers to a preconceived opinion or feeling toward a person based solely on their affiliation with the group. It is an unfavorable opinion or feeling beforehand or without knowledge, thought, or reason. This feeling may be translated into action by discriminating against the person or members of the target group. There are different types of prejudice. The most common types are racism, sexism, classism, ageism, and religion. Racism is a belief that race is a fundamental determinant of human traits and capacities, and that racial differences produce an inherent superiority of a particular race. Example is the sentence, "All Asians are considered inferior in the knowledge of the international language." The phrase, "all Asians are inferior," makes this sentence a prejudice of racism. Next is sexism. Sexism is an idea that one sex or gender is superior to or more valuable than the other. The sentence, "Women are considered weak and lack the strength and ability to do the work of men," is an example of sexism because it undermines the strength and ability of all women as compared to men. Another type is classism, or the prejudice against or in favor of people based on wealth, occupation, income, education, and social network. The sentence, "The poor are uneducated and do not help our country. They should not be treated well by the government," shows a prejudice against people with low or no education at all. Next is ageism, or the prejudice against a particular age group, and especially the elderly. Example of this is the sentence, "All middle-aged adults should not be hired because they only become a burden." The last type is prejudice of religion, or the discrimination which involves treating a person unfavorably because of his or her religious beliefs. The sentence showing this kind of prejudice is, "When Muslim boys are wearing kufi or school cap and Muslim girls are wearing hijab or head covering, they experienced bullying based on their attire." Another term that causes confusion and is often used interchangeably with prejudice is bias, but these two terms differ from each other. Let's examine how it differs from the former. Bias is a tendency to look at things in a certain way in preference to another way, or the tendency to favor or go against a particular person, thing, or point of view over another, resulting in unfairness. Just like prejudice, there are 5 most common types of bias. They are anchoring, media, confirmation, conformity, and halo effect. The anchoring bias is a tendency to be overly influenced by the first piece of information that we hear. The sentence, "From what I know, I chose you because I believed others are not as good as you," is an example of a sentence that shows anchoring bias. The second type is media bias, which is the bias of journalists and news producers within the mass media in the selection of the events to be reported and how they are covered. For example, In one of the most high profile trials of the 20th century, O.J. Simpson was acquitted of murder. Many people remain biased against him years later, treating him like a convicted killer anyway, because of too much negative news reported about him. Another type is confirmation bias, or the tendency to listen more often to information that supports our existing beliefs. For instance, a neighbor who thinks dogs are inherently dangerous sees a vicious dog attack an innocent child. Another neighbor who loves dogs sees a dog defending itself against a menacing child. Neither eyewitness account is reliable due to confirmation bias. Then we have conformity bias, which refers to our tendency to take cues for proper behavior in most contexts from the actions of others rather than exercise our own independent judgment. For example, all your friends are excited about this new concert. Even though you really don't like the bands, you might conform to go with them. This is because we don't want to be left out of the group. The last is the halo effect. This is a tendency to see only all the wonderful thing about a person and let the perceptions on everything else about that person be distorted, also known as the physical attractiveness stereotype or the what is beautiful is good principle. An example of this is when one assumes that a good looking person in a photograph is also an overall good person. This error in judgment reflects one's individual preferences, prejudices, ideology, and social perception. In your answer sheet, identify which one is bias and which one is prejudice. Explain also based from each paragraph why is it bias and why is it prejudice. My dear students, that ends today's lesson. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch and never stop to learn new things. Bye!